Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide today as I look at the worst card designs of the 1990 card year. I'm looking at just one year because here we are in 1990 and there are a whole bunch of different card sets, the card designs that have come out all in the same year. 1990 was a really impressive year in terms of the explosion of available cards. You don't think about it necessarily as much as you do with 89 because of just how you went from almost nothing in 1988 to a lot in 1989. But in 1990 there was still a very large proliferation of new card sets that emerged, more than anything else in hockey. Because in 1989 hockey was Topps and O-Pee-Chee, which is 1.5 card sets. For 1990, you had the addition of Score, Pro Set, Bowman for Topps, as well as Upper Deck. So you went from 1.5 to basically 5.5 card brands all in 1 year in hockey. So it was a huge explosion, but it also became a national discussion at that point. So it becomes a part of the overall discussion of cards, but also all the other card sets. There were so many in 1990 that there were 22 different card sets, main card releases. So I'm not even talking about Action Packed All Madden, and I'm not talking about Topps Big. This is just the main card brands for the year. And on top of that, there was only one card design that was repeated from one sport to another, and that was Bowman. So other than that, that means there are 21 different card designs in just 1990. And that means that this is a great time to start to look at, not only include hockey, but also to talk about one particular year, which is what I'm obviously doing here. So that's what we're looking at. And for me, this is a really important year because this was the year when I started. So a lot of these card sets I either love or hate, in part because of my own experience. So I'm going to try to tone down how much of that own personal excitement falls into it. But you are going to hear me talking a bit about these cards from just the discovery in 1990 of them. And I like to start off with an honorable mention, and I'm going to actually do two in this case. It's a kind of a unique situation for me to do because both of these, the first one is Sportflix, and that's because it's basically the same card design they did from 1986. For 5 years, they made pretty much the same card. And really, Sportflix was more a secondary card set, not really a main card set. And so this is just another year that they were one of the worst card designs, if not the worst card design, all the way along. So I'm basically just saying, yeah, they had Sportflix as well. It wouldn't be until 1994 they actually looked decent at all. So I just need to throw it in there to remind you, yeah, that also existed. I'm not even going to talk about it, but we all know that it's just not worth discussing. But the other one I want to talk about is 1990 Action Packed Football. I actually like this card. I always have. Some of the cards do look good. The problem with this card is that big gold foil border around the outside is overpowering. And for a whole 280 card set where it's all the same, that's too much. The card design is largely the same design they started out in 87 trying to make a card with. They finally made it. And in 1989, they had done a test set with this border. Had they said, okay, good, that works, now let's change it, then we could have had a really great card, but they didn't. And so unfortunately, while I definitely say this card does not deserve to be on this list, I've got to mention it because of how much of a letdown that big border around the outside was. So otherwise, it should be a great card. Card back looks great. I've just got to throw it in here as, yeah, they should have done better. But as far as the actual lousy card designs for 1990, I start off with Bowman. Now in 89, Bowman kind of got a pass because they made a novelty card. It was a retro card and it was supposed to kind of look back at the tradition of baseball. Okay, not bad. In 1990, they wanted to continue the card by making it a real bona fide earn your stripes with the audience type of a card. And I don't get what they did here. This is white border around the outside. They have a thin rainbow. The rainbow is packed in there. Rainbow inner border. And then down at the bottom, they have this text really tightly packed in there. And it's really the text fit into the bottom that makes me really bothered by this card. It looks like a little novelty card that they did kind of off on the side. You send away and you just get these cards. That's what it looks like to me. And I actually don't entirely hate the border, the inner border, except for the fact that with that text, it just makes the whole thing feel out of scale. And it doesn't do anything to help the image on the inside. But do note, this is for baseball. They also did the same design in hockey, and in hockey the images are busy enough. I think it actually kind of works. I don't mind it in hockey. Not a great card design, not even a good card design, but at least not a terrible one. But in baseball, it is terrible. And on top of that, it has the baseball nerd stats on the back. Now, I'm not disparaging that. I think that it's a cool idea that Topps had, where Bowman and Stadium Club were intended to be cards designed for people who just love the sport. That was the whole focus. So for somebody like me who likes sports but loves cards, there's nothing for me on this card. And that's part of the problem with this card, is that it's not good on the front, it's terrible on the back for a general collector. So yeah, this was pretty lousy. And likewise, in 1990, the Score baseball set was, in this case, this was a little bit overly designed. What they like to do for Score for these first couple of years was to do a full color border around the outside, and they would change it every 110 cards to a different color. And so having that bold color on the outside it's tricky. You got to make it work. And in 1991, they would. But here in 1990, they did not at all. It was an abysmal failure because of that yellow border on the inside. So you have this whole big theme of an outer color, and then every card, no matter what color, it has the yellow border on the inside, which is an attention grabber. And then that's the transition to the image, which means that the image now is fighting with the yellow border around the outside, and it makes it a big train wreck. You're not able to focus on the thing you're supposed to focus on, which is the picture of the player. The band doesn't help. And then down at the bottom, they have a big area with the yellow, and then they have the text for the player is in a whole nother color with some little angled boxes for kind of an effect with the initials. And so that is really where your eye is drawn, but there's nothing to see down there. So the only thing on this card that's clear is the logo for the team. That's the only thing that is actually strong about this card. Everything else is a big mess because the yellow border overpowers and then makes it kind of like a war with everything in the card design. Card back's not too bad, but the card fronts for these cards are really, really lousy. So, and in 1989, they had actually used a white border around the outside, and they did the color as a theme on the inside. That actually worked. So in 88, they had an overly powerful card border, but that could have been fixed with better images. Then in 1989, they made a really well-balanced card design. Whether it was a great card design or not, it was well-balanced. 1990, this was a mess, and then in 91, they'd finally figure it out. So for this card, it really should have been better. And I've always been perplexed by what they went with this. It was like somebody didn't take the time to sit down and proof it and really make sure that these cards worked. So not good. With number 3, I'm going with 1990's Flir Basketball Set. And this is one where I'm going to have to acknowledge that when I started out with NBA Hoops and with Skybox. That was where I started. And then I got into Pro Set, and I also collected this set. It was a rote process for me. I just went ahead and bought the packs, put the set together, and it was only the inserts I really cared about. The rest of it was just kind of that thing that you did. It was something that ran in the back of my mind. I didn't really worry about it because there's nothing about these cards that to like. I mean, nothing to like. Now, I do know there's some people who do like it, and I don't know why they do. And I've actually heard explanations about it. I just don't see it. The part of what's so bewildering about 1990 Flir is that they had been doing good card designs prior to that. In baseball, they'd been doing okay to pretty good card designs, and in basketball, they'd been doing great card designs, good and great card designs. And then here, they got self-conscious, and actually they were kind of responding to other card brands. So in baseball, they were responding to 89 Score. Here, they were responding to 89 Hoops, and it's a mess. The first problem is the white border around the outside is kind of overpowering. So you need to have an inner border to do something with it. And they use their red, white, and blue trick where they have red and blue bands on the inside. I like what they did with other sets where they were using red, white, and blue. But here, the red and the blue bands on the inner border, they don't do anything. They serve no function. They don't help anything at all. And then down at the bottom, they have a team color theme of some stencil work for the player name. And I mean, it's a nice idea, but the like here with the Bulls, it actually looks pretty decent. It's not great, but it looks decent. In other cases, it's not very good at all because it's anemic. It doesn't have any strength. But nothing on this card is really strong, including the image. The image is really fuzzy. So the images don't pull you in, even though they really could. The card itself doesn't do anything. It's just, it doesn't know what it wants to be. And then the worst part of all is that the logo for the team, it has a white border around the outside, which makes it really enunciate. And if it gets lost in the image, okay, it's not that bad. But like here with Michael, it's up in the dark rafters, which means it is the single focal point of the card. That's what pulls your eye in, and not Michael. So this card is a huge disappointment, but heaven forbid you turn it over and look at the back, because oh, that is a bad card back. Really a rank card back. So this is a huge, huge letdown. But it's not a horrible card. It's a huge letdown. I hate this card. But now it's time to move on to Topps Football. Wow. So, like I said, I started out collecting in 1990, and this is when I was fresh-faced and discovering things and learning them all brand new. The Topps cards I collected out of the supermarkets. I bought those big cello packs with, 25, 30 cards in it. They were about the same price as the regular 15 card packs. Every time I'd open the packs, I would wonder, why in the world are these guys making cards? I didn't know who Topps was. To me, they seemed like some upstart that just had some cheap little printer and they were churning these things out. And in a way, that's kind of what Topps was at the time. They were going to have to go through a major evolution of getting down to making quality cards. And this really is the nadir. This is the bottom of the barrel for Topps. Every time I would open the packs, I would wonder, why do they think they can make cards? The idea that this company was cards, that this was the company all through time, that would have been a shock to me. And the first thing that really stands out to me is you look down at the bottom, you see the Topps text in red. This whole card looks like it was designed by Sharpie. I mean, it really does. It's big and blocky, but that text is such a powerful element. And that's what would always catch my eye. And then I'd follow the football up to the image and immediately, boom, get caught by the hash marks, the green and white hash marks up at the top, which are down at the bottom. And then there's that blue band down there. And then there's the weird inner border colors. All of that stuff is all fighting, and it's all super blocky, and it's way over designed. And it would take a while of looking at all that stuff until I got bored to finally look at the image. It was remarkable. I always was stunned at how bad a card design this was. And this probably should be the worst card design of 1990, except when you look at the back's actually pretty decent. They did make decent card designs. Not great card backs, but the card back was okay. It was decent. I can't say that for Flir Baseball. Oh, this has always amazed me at just how bad this card is. Now, first off, we are looking at an Oakland A here, and they have a dark band. So keep that in mind. You're looking at a good example of a card. This is actually one of the better cards. The white border is, you can work with a white border. And here the idea of having that ribbon around for the name and all that wrapping around on the inside, okay, it's an okay idea, but the way that they designed it was really pretty bad. It makes these weird white triangles down at the bottom, which is kind of distracting. And then the player isn't framed, so he doesn't really stand out in the way that the framing should work. On top of that, they play a trick where the player comes out of the frame, out into the outer border. And that is a trick that can work. In this case, it just doesn't. So for here, like with Dennis Eckersley, he basically gets lost in the border, and then you can't see the player at all. So it's a big mess of a card. But here's the problem. Like I said, this is a good example. This is a dark band. Well, what if the band's white? So let's look at Bo Jackson. And here with that horrible yellow, the whole card just becomes perfectly anemic. Everything disappears. Except Bo. I just talked about how the player is not framed. Well, here, The player is everything. It's all you can see, but it's a lousy image. And so there's nothing to catch your eye about this card. Really bad, remarkably bad. And even on the card back, at least with Topps, they had a decent card back. Here, I've always hated these cards. The card backs for Flir, they like to put colors on there. And at least with the monotone card backs that Topps made, they could pack tons of stuff in there, but it actually read. Well, here with all the different colors, it's all kind of soft and you can't really see the different elements, and it doesn't work well. So this is a card that fails on every single level, and that is not a good thing. So for me, these are the worst cards of 1990, and they are among the worst cards of the whole decade. So we're getting off to some really bad stuff. But this gave us some of the worst cards of the 90s, but it also gave us some of the best. So that is definitely a place we need to spend some time looking at some really phenomenal cards at the opposite end of the spectrum. And that's what this decade was. This was where a bunch of card companies got caught flat-footed, while a number of other card companies were so innovative that they were already inventing the future. And you had to make some big adjustments in 1991, which they would. So this is just about as bad as card design got. It was a remarkably bad year. And yeah, so definitely check out the best of when you get a chance. And subscribe if you haven't done so already. Check out my other videos. And thank you very much for watching.